Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the podcast. This is your first time a podcast is a personally oriented discussion centered all around select topics. Today's topics are all around real estate as an investment and what the market looks like for current buyers. Joining me today is Everett Smith. Everett is a licensed associate real estate broker. Who am I? I'm Will Tarashuk, the founder of Willie T Productions and a professional podcast host. So say goodbye to the lease and hello to the mortgage, because your journey to homeownership starts right now. And Everett, just like that, here we are, my friend. It's been a long time.
Oh my God.
How are you?
Doing so well, man.
Real estate broker, not what I expected when I knew you were in college, but yet here we are.
Not even as your RA?
Not even as my RA. No, that was a very different time. That's a podcast for a different day. So 2026 buyer landscape, let's just start there. What should a first home buyer expect? What are the expectations versus the actual reality of the current market?
Yeah, so a lot of what we're seeing right now is based on where buyers are feeling in terms of their own confidence, I feel like. And what I mean by that is that when I'm having those first conversations, what I'm hearing a lot of is people who are overwhelmed at what's going on, or just a little bit nervous about the process in general, specifically and more so because of what's going on around them, not necessarily about what's going on in their own life and their own accounts and such. And I think the reason that is because everyone's usually looking externally for, is now a good time to buy, which is a very interesting question and very specific to every single person.
Yeah, it's a hard question to answer because the answer is always going to be it depends. I tell people, as I'm not a real estate person at all, the right time to buy a home is when you can afford it. And it's easy to get lost in the noise of the headlines. Typically in the news they talk about the national markets a lot, but real estate is very localized to New York City.
Super
depending where you live.
Oh my gosh, it matters not only neighborhood to neighborhood, which is what everyone thinks about, but you could be block to block, literally just one block crossing over completely changes the value of your home. In the same building, right, 2 apartments, same exact layout, same exact square footage, if they are facing different directions and have different views, the feng shui could be completely off with one and it's going to be valued differently than someone might see the other one. So.
I mean, to be fair though, one view is looking at Brooklyn and the other view is looking at Jersey. I mean, I know New Yorkers don't like New Jersey and New Jersey kind of the same way, but...
Come to Brooklyn because then you get the city to look at.
No. You say go to Jersey because I say I'm going to fight you on this. Living in Hoboken, we get New York City from the front. We get everything it has to offer. You guys in Brooklyn and Queens, you get it from the back.
It just depends on what you want, right?
Yeah.
A lot of my job in the process is making sure that I fully understand that so that I can use those outside trends to really guide you along this process and make sure that you're not spinning your wheels or wasting your time on some of the things that may or may not matter for you at the end of the day.
Yeah, and what's the number one thing to get wrong with their expectation?
With expectation to get wrong, it's kind of the start process, really. With rentals, it's very simple for everyone to just go to Street Easy, reach out to a broker, schedule your appointment. For a sale, when you go to Street Easy, when you reach out to the broker, it's 99% of the time not matching you up with the broker who's actually representing the listing. Street Easy likes to match you up with a buyer expert for the area, neighborhood, or building, but they don't know that up front.
Right, so when you're looking to buy, is it better just to go to an estate firm like yours just directly instead of the Street Easy, kind of cut out that middleman?
That depends on where you're at and where you're comfortable. And I would say that if you wanted to ensure that you're matched up with someone who fits your needs and fits everything that you're looking for, going to a brokerage might be one way to do it, but it wouldn't be my favorite way. Just because if you walk into the door of a brokerage, you're potentially going to be matched up hopefully with someone that knows the area of where that brick and mortar spot is located, but you have no idea because a lot of us agents are going to be out and about in the field and not at the office 100% of the time.
Right.
So you don't really know who you're getting matched up with in that same sense when you go to the office. What I would say is a better recommendation is ask your friends. Ask people that you know that have purchased, your boss, your coworkers. They'll tell you if they had a great experience and something that stood out for them. If they don't tell you about a standout experience, then you can forego that or maybe interview just to get a sense of what that agent was for that person and maybe something of what to avoid. But I would say those personal connections, those personal relationships are really one of the few best ways to get to know an agent.
Yeah, it's built on the trust, right? It's easier. It's like your network is your net worth at the end of the day. Like my friend's mom is a real estate agent, so I already know in New Jersey. I'm going to call her as soon as we're ready to buy a house. And it's going to be easier for me to ask questions to someone I know and who was recommended by someone I trust, who's like one of my best friends. So it makes that process a little more comfortable, a little more natural.
So I'm going to stop you right there.
Yep.
Just because to that relationship point, I want to just point out one other thing, because a lot of people also think, let me go ask mom, dad, Uncle Joe, Aunt Jane. I want you to ask them. I want you to reach out to them. And if they know what they're doing, know what they're talking about, that's going to be a great connection for you. But do that interview process. That's going to help people stand out for you and show you the difference between someone who's out there in the field versus someone who maybe just does this every once in a while. And I can't tell you how many times where people I know will try to match up with family members just because it's like, oh, I know them, I want to support them. And that's great, but that person isn't practicing at the level that they need to be practicing in order to make something happen, find what you need, or go above and beyond in certain ways and aspects to get the deal done.
And it can be a mismatch, but doesn't that fall more on the agent to be like, ooh, I'm not the right person to help you, let me refer you to this person?
Yes, but I can tell you that most agents aren't thinking the way I'm thinking.
Not going to turn down a sale.
And most agents are probably chasing the money more than they are going to say, like, you know what, I don't think I'm the best person for this. And I've done that several times where, so the perfect example was my aunt was searching for a property up in, she was looking a little bit in Rockland County, a little bit more upstate New York, but I don't drive. I don't have a car. I don't know that area. And I said, you know what, let me see what I can do first. You know, I'll go and tour a couple of places with you, get a sense of the neighborhood. That wasn't the hard part. What really helped solidify the values of neighborhoods is kind of the sales that have happened. But then it came to knowing what schools are around, knowing what restaurants are around, knowing the neighborhood. If you're practicing with someone who isn't doing this regularly or does this every once in a while, that's going to make the difference between someone who is literally working every single day, out with clients, speaking to their sellers, and just hands on the ground.
Well, that gets to like getting prepared for the home, right? So like, the process takes a long time, probably a few months. You got to get your finances in order to get pre-approved, but also it's just the mental aspect. Mentally prepared, the big commitment, you're signing a 30-year lease. 30 years, your feet are planted in that house, in that property. So what do you recommend people do before buying, beyond just exploring the neighborhood, like just getting comfortable with the area? What kind of research should they do in terms of technicals, money related, lifestyle related? How do they go about that process?
First of all, I want to set the expectation for your timeline. When you're going into this, especially as a first-time buyer, and if you're getting financing, because most first-time home buyers, yes, are getting financing.
Of course.
You should expect in New York City for this process to take at the minimum 3 months, and I would say like 120 days is like your sweet spot. From the point at which you are requesting that first appointment to sit down with anyone to probably your closing date. And depending on what kind of property you have, it'll definitely take longer. Now, that being said, when you're getting set up in the first place, the very first thing that I'd say you would need to do is get in touch with your lender. And the reason why I say that is because yes, your finances are super important, but what people seem to miss when they have finally accumulated the amount that they think they need to buy is, first of all, the closing costs that are associated with it, and secondly, what that monthly payment actually looks like. When you sit down with me, I have a pretty good understanding of like what's possible for you, but I'm not going to tell you how much you're going to pay per month, right? Yeah. I'm not going to tell you how much you're going to, what your rate is contributing to that monthly payment.
Yeah, those are all questions for the lender.
Exactly. And so a lot of people, they don't budget. They'll just come to me, or they will just come to the listing and say, you know, I think I have enough to purchase. How do I make an offer?
Right.
And I'm like, all right, well, I'm excited you're ready to make an offer. We have this first step that is way more important, and then we'll get into in a future talk.
Yeah, I mean, your whole thing is really just a liaison. Like you can provide them questions to ask the lender, but you cannot answer said questions because you're not a financial expert. You're the real estate expert.
Absolutely. When you're coming to me at this step, My goal is to figure out, who do you bank with? So I'm going to connect you with a couple lenders from the people you bank with. Maybe you have a very interesting situation. Maybe I can't match you with a traditional bank. There are some loan officers that I can match you up with, and we're going to be speaking to one in the future. There's definitely different ways to connect you as the buyer with someone who's going to be the best case scenario for your situation. That's something I can help with.
Yeah, playing matchmaker.
A little bit.
It's based purely off communication skills, defining their needs and communicating that to the lender as well as the attorney for a sale and all that kind of stuff. And I mean, I work with financial people. They're not always the biggest people. Like, they're not always the most personable people. They're very math brain, can be a little rigid. So having someone like you who can kind of understand where they're coming from, talk to talk, and play that matchmaker, that's kind of a big part of what you do. And then the common misconception too is, hey man, an agent just shows the house, collects a fee, the home does the work. And they like, man, I hate paying for the agent. And they think I can just do this myself. So yeah, I see that reaction boiling in your stomach right now.
It's like,
So debunk that all you do is just show the home shows the value. Why should I hire an agent instead of just saying, you know what, I'm just gonna do this myself?
First of all, I answer this question by saying, like, what does an agent do for you?
Everything.
Not everything, but we can do a lot of things, and things tend to bleed after a little bit. First of all, you have two different types of agents now, right? We have buyer's agents and we have seller's agents, and it's important to make that distinction between the two of them, because when you're going out as a buyer's agent is going to help you find a property, right? Number one, you're going to go out and look for properties to go check a look at, make sure that they match all the criteria that you set for yourself. Once we find that property, we're going to help you negotiate the best deal possible. That best deal possible is something that a lot of people think price when they think of negotiations. That's just one part of it, right? We have terms and conditions that go into that. When are you closing? Are there any other contingencies that are attached to that? So these are all things that, again, we're just working with this on the regular basis. This is a regular Tuesday for me. But for someone who doesn't even know what a contingency is, these are things that could actually make or break your transaction. For example, let's say you are making a purchase, right? I can put $200,000 down, that's 20% down on $1 million purchase price, which is pretty regular here in New York City.
Yeah.
Now, you have to go get a mortgage. Did you know you had to put a mortgage contingency on that? Do you know what that even is? Do you know what happens?
You talking about PMI?
It's no.
Okay, this is something different.
This is like the basics of putting together your deal, especially when you're financing, right? A seller's agent who works in the interests of the seller to make sure that they get the best terms and conditions for the seller might tell you, oh, you don't need a mortgage contingency. It's better if you don't have one. Go ahead, put your offer down. What you don't realize, if you've never done brokerage before, is that what that contingency means is that if for some reason you can't get financing, you are still wholly responsible for that deal.
Right.
And you have to figure it out in some way, shape, or form, or you are in default. And you will lose your contract deposit. If you're putting 10% down, that's $100,000 that you just lost and have nothing to show for. And so you can do this all you want. And someone who I would recommend doing this on their own, is someone who is working with deals every day, who has access to an MLS, and who knows what it takes to transact, and is probably transacting at least once or twice every year. Because it's not just the transactions and how to do them, it's the laws and regulations. We have some big changes just in the past year, but even this year, I'm about to attend a session where anyone purchasing with an LLC, which is a lot of the landlords here in New York City,
definitely.
They have a huge new alteration that is going to affect the way that they purchase property. And they need to understand that before they go and do that, because it's going to affect their bottom line.
Yeah, New York City laws are always changing.
Every single
it's fluid.
week, month, day.
We're going to get to that with a different talk with a lawyer as well. Ooh. But also, just hiring an agent, it sounds to me like my main takeaway from that was, it's going to be, if you do it by yourself, you can do it. It is possible. In the age of the internet, it's very easy to learn these things. I even think you should do that. Doing your own research is how you're going to ask the right questions to get the proper answers. But if you do it by yourself, it's going to be a lot easier for some of these lenders or anyone else, buyers or sellers, to take advantage of you. But I got a friend, he's like, why am I going to pay an agent? I can do this myself. I'm like, oh yeah, dude? You sure? You work in healthcare. You're working 40, 50-hour weeks, and you play video games with us 10 hours a week. How When, why are you going to do this? I just don't believe you. You don't have the time. And then when you hire someone like this, it's time, peace of mind, ease of access, and you don't know what you don't know.
That's really what it comes down to. And like I said, people have that I'm calling it that renter's mentality of I have my cash, I'm gonna show up and it's gonna be easy. Let's put it this way, it could be that easy. Sometimes it is that easy. There is a deal every blue moon that comes on my desk that it is so simple from start to finish. And I'm like, wow, this was like butter. Of the 8 years I've been doing this, I've maybe had that twice. And it's not something that I expect. Also in the terms of I'm buying this, but what about my sale? I mean, you're talking about 30 years for a mortgage, but most people don't live in their home for more than, like the average is 7 to 8 before they're getting tired or want to uptrade or move somewhere else.
They want to do something.
Have you thought about how difficult this is going to be to sell? Like, for example, in Brooklyn, we have a lot of buildings with tax abatements. Actually, it's throughout the city, but it's something that you're going to see less and less. They're trying to bring it back. We'll see what happens. But those buildings with tax abatements are valuable because you're spending 10 to 12 bucks on your taxes per year. If you're an investor, that's no brainer.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't you invest in that?
Of course.
But now think of it, 5-6 years down the line. Let's say that abatement is ending soon and you're an investor now and you're renting out this property. Well, now going into that last 5-6 years, your margins are being encroached upon. And then when you go to sell it, you have to sell it with that in mind. Like, the buyer of this is not getting that tax benefit anymore. Is this as attractive a property as it used to be?
Yeah.
I don't think a lot of people as a buyer, and especially a first-time buyer, even recognize that. And even if this is your second time purchasing a home in New York City, when is the last time you purchased a home in New York City? How different is that process in itself?
Very. It's going to be very.
Hey, you made it all the way to the end. Congratulations. I just wanted to say, if you found this video helpful, definitely like it and or share it with someone you know who might be looking to make a transaction in New York City soon. I have a few more videos in this similar style with tips and tricks that could potentially save you hundreds if not thousands of dollars on your transaction. So definitely subscribe so you don't miss a thing. And thank you so much for watching. As always, Easy NYC Real Estate, where I make New York City real estate easy for you. See you in the next one.